Greetings and welcome to Montpelier Connection, BCTV's connecting you with your state legislators. This is the first show of the 2012 year and session, and I'm Mike Mrowicki, State Representative for Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster. Today we're joined by two of our local legislators, Senator Jeanette White and Representative Sarah Edwards of Brattleboro. The legislature has started off full speed ahead. We are all up to our necks in committee work. This week, though, there was a major event that is taking over the conversations, and looking ahead to our work in the legislature will color a lot of what we do. And it was the decision by federal Judge Murtha around Vermont Yankee and its continued operation, and what role, if any, the state should have in that. And that will be the focus for our show here tonight. Sarah, since you are on the Committee of Jurisdiction directly with that, I wonder if you could share some of your perspectives on that, and then we can go over to the Senate side and see what's happening there.
Well, thank you, Mike. And first of all, I should let people know that I serve on House Natural Resources and Energy Committee. I've been part of that committee for the past 8 years, including this year. And I'm not quite sure what to take first, whether you want me to talk about the decision itself, the two main points, maybe that's where I should start. The major decisions were Act 160, and that determined whether the legislature had a say in whether Vermont Yankee could continue to operate, and we lost that point. And then the other one was Act 74, which discusses the ongoing storage of nuclear waste. We really cannot hold them back from continuing to operate just because they run out of room in the spent fuel pool or in the casks, which they're going to do in 2012. We had stipulated that we would have to give them permission to have increased storage after 2012 when all of the space ran out. So we've also been denied that opportunity. But there are other pending issues that we can have a say on, and I could mention a few of those, and then we might want to talk about some of the broader issues.
Are these issues that the legislature has purview over, or is this the Public Service Board?
Well, actually it's a number of different things. The CPG, which is a Certificate of Public Good, is something that we require of all generating plants in the state of Vermont. So the Entergy's lawyers would have liked to have taken that away from us too, but they didn't win on that point. So they're going to be evaluated for the CPG, and I believe, well, there is an open docket on that. I think that the Public Service Board has collected all the data that they want to consider, and so now it's just a question of them considering all that data. So we have and that's on environmental and economic issues, and those can be interrelated, not just environmental and not just economic, but how those two things interact can be considered. There are 3 other points actually that are pending as well, and the Conservation Law Foundation right now also has a docket that says that we can cancel the existing Certificate of Public Good over leaking radionuclides that are now, we know that most of us thought they were going into the river, but it is in fact true that they are. So there's that case. Then there's another case that the Conservation Law Foundation has opened actually down in Washington, D.C., and this is a point that is related to the Clean Water Act back in the early 70s, that the NRC should have never granted the relicensing of Vermont Yankee because they do not have that permit, that general permit. It's very broad, based on levels of pH levels, dissolved oxygen, and even gets into things like aesthetics and historical preservation. One more that is open is this issue around thermal discharge. VY does not have a permit for what they're creating increased temperature in the river, which is potentially very environmental damaging. So those are a few things, and I could talk more, but let's see what Jeanette has to say.
Sure.
Well, I just want to say something about the vote itself, that because we did, both the House and the Senate and passed and the governor signed, as Sarah indicated, Act 160, which gave us the ability to.
This was Governor Douglas.
Yes, this was giving us the ability to weigh in on whether there should be continued operation. And at the time, everybody seemed to favor it because there was no thought that we would ever vote the way we ended up doing. The Senate took a vote last February, and we voted no on the continued operation. In the vote itself on the floor, when we had that vote, the word safety was never mentioned, ever. Our vote on the floor that day was not based on that. When the committee made its report, there was no talk of safety. But he went back and, as he said, there were instances that were too numerous to list where legislators actually used the word safety. And I'm sure that's true, but the vote itself.
It's not the words we say before, because that's a dialogue, a deliberation.
Exactly.
We throw words around, we try to get at what each other is meaning.
Right, exactly.
And what we vote on is the paper and what the words say, what is in the bill.
And
I mean, otherwise, we'd have to stop all dialogue about anything.
Exactly, I agree with you, and that's
Yeah.
why. And I think he
It
tried to
was-
put himself into the intent, into the mind of the legislators,
Yeah.
and into the intent. So I disagree with
I
that.
think,
But he is the judge.
He's
he
the
made
judge.
the decision,
Yeah.
and so now we need to
Move
we
on.
need to move on, and whether we'll appeal or not, I don't know. That's a decision that the AG and the governor, I think, have to make. But there are I think that there are a number of bills that will be resurrected that have been languishing because we were waiting
Right.
to hear what the decision was going to be here. So I have a couple of those bills in myself.
I think many of us, we're looking at the big picture when we deal with all of our issues in Vermont. What's our short-term energy future for the whole state? What's the economic benefits or liabilities possibly for the whole state? That's why there's been such concern about the decommissioning fund over the years, because there's real concerns that Louisiana Entergy has not been dealing in a straightforward fashion with the state when it comes to the necessary funds in the decommissioning fund. The inspiration for a lot of this, I think, is maybe confusing for some people locally, especially if you work there. But our job is to look out for all 600,000 Vermonters. And we hope we can do a good job of representing locally the people who live here. But sometimes those concerns, short-term and long-term, are in conflict with what's good for the whole state. As we move forward, Sarah, you're in that committee of jurisdiction. What are the short-term plans, long-term plans? You know, we're in a state of transition, literally, when it comes to our energy future and,
Right.
and reliance on old technologies, oil, gas, nuclear. These are energy sources from the last century. We're trying
That's
to move
right.
ahead into the 21st century. What are you looking at?
Well, a couple of things I'd like to say is that there is no plant, no nuclear plant worldwide that has operated beyond its 47th year. That's an astounding fact. So, you know, what's happened is that they become too expensive to operate with all the breakdowns. And, you know, Entergy is going to have to replace at Vermont Yankee a condenser, which is a huge capital outlay.
You
But-
have an idea of what kind of money we're talking about?
Well, a few years ago, it was, I don't know if they were talking about buying a used one or not. I'm not sure that they're around.
Maybe on eBay.
But maybe on eBay. But, you know, it's anywhere from 100 million to 200 million. And,
It's a
you know,
lot.
it's a lot of money. And one of the things that we've been doing as a state, particularly on the House Natural Resources and Energy Committee, is really looking forward to shifting what our electricity sources are going to be. And we are very pleased with the way it's been going in terms of bringing on new renewables and just the way we've been paying attention to the details of making that happen. So you know, we have a new energy plan, which says that we're going to be on.
We have an energy plan for
We
the
have
first time.
a Vermont State Comprehensive Energy Plan,
Right.
which is really wonderful to read, actually, believe it or not.
It's a great step forward.
It's a great step forward, and so we have been doing a lot of work on this, and we have been doing work every single year to make it better and more attractive. Economics, jobs. We need jobs. We need interesting jobs to keep our youth in state. So it's been a real economic driver. Trying to think of what else that would. Getting back to the decommissioning fund.
Right.
There's a brand new fund out right now. It came out on January 9th, so just a few days ago, but it is dense, and I only got the broadest numbers for us. And comparing two different types of decommissioning. One is decon, where you do it very quickly, and one is safe store, where it ties up the plant and the land for 60 years, and we're talking about going all the way out to at least 2082. So, you know, you think the plant shuts down, but then you've still got the waste to deal with, and it's not good stuff. No one can say a darn good thing about that waste, especially when it's in the spent fuel pool.
One of the things I heard this morning at someplace where I was, and they were talking about this, and they were talking about the economic impact and whether VY closes down in March or in 5 years or 7 years or whatever, there's an economic impact, and what we need to be doing is thinking about there's a huge plant there, and that's a resource that we have. It's got transmission lines, it's there. But if we do safe store, so people were saying, well, why don't you plan for what you're going to put in there instead of worrying about, well, we can't plan for what's going to go in there because it could be 60 years down the road.
And that's an authorized.
Hopefully I won't be here in 60 years. But I mean, that is a legitimate way for them to do it, but it means that it's not available for any other use.
So Jeanette and Mike, I'm wondering, I think we see a really healthy decommissioning bill coming out this year, because we have tried this in the past and it's been vetoed. That's under Douglas, but I think we realize that this fund is inadequate. When I mentioned the, but by the way, the decommissioning study is done by a company called TLG Services that Entergy has a financial interest in. So, you know, getting an independent is very hard for us to do, because here's this company, but you know, they have an interest in it. So how much do we believe these numbers? But we're talking for Safe Store, and I guess this is over
$1 billion.
It's a lot of money. This says $984 million, and believe me, it's going to be more than that. So we need to get on track with the funding. I think that's got to stop, where it's just based on investments coming out of our stock market. So I think we need a very serious bill to fund that, and to fund the greenfielding that has been promised, because the NRC only requires to a certain amount, and Entergy made a promise to us that they would do greenfielding, and I'm really wondering about that now, since we have to have a new contract.
And
I don't know.
I don't know. A few years ago, I had introduced a bill, because they're consistently over their fence line radiation limits. And so I introduced a bill that said for every day they were over the limit, there would be a fine. And the fine would be based on half of the profit for that day. So you can average out the profits over a year's time and assign it to 365 days. And for every day they were over, they would have to pay half of the profit into a fund.
Contribution.
Well, it's a fine. It's a fine. If you have a zoning violation, you can be paying $100 a day for that zoning violation. So this is a violation of the contract, and so I'm going to see if we can beef up that bill.
Now you said you read some of the bill.
I did. Some of the decision, you mean?
That's right. I'm sorry. The decision from Judge Murtha. Now, were you saying it takes the jurisdiction away from the legislature and kicks it back really to the Public Service Board. Is that what you were saying?
It does.
And
but-
what are the kinds of things that the Public Service Board looks at?
Well, they've limited what they can look at. They can only look at the economics and the
Right.
reliability
And environment.
the environment.
Right.
They've, in the past, the Public Service Board has required, before they'll give a certificate of public good, they've required what's called a PPA, a power purchase agreement. But he specifically said that they couldn't attach that to it. So that means that they do not have to look at all at how Vermont will benefit from the electricity itself.
Right, because we don't have a
Bec-
PPA.
Right, because, and so they could sell everything outside of the state. But we look at the economics and the environment and the reliability
Yeah.
of the plant itself, not of the,
Right,
what it
and
costs us for rates.
actually, I think that that's what they prefer, because
The you mean the Public Service Board?
the purchase power agreement, because they can get a higher rate out on the
Oh.
market.
Oh, they don't.
They
you
didn't
mean
want to
Entergy
sell it in
doesn't-
here anyway.
Entergy did not want to have the Public Service Board look at a PPA at all.
And that's why we don't
and
have
that-
one.
Right, and Martha said that they
Well,
can't
part of that was
impose
too, the last offer they made to Vermont was actually higher
Yes.
than anything
Right.
we could get now. So
Right.
this talk about cheap power for Vermont was
Yeah.
not at all an accurate portrayal of that.
That's
So
right.
what did I see in the paper this morning that, or someday, that CVPS and Green Mountain Power have a suit
Right.
against Entergy? What was that
That's
for?
based on reliability, because they allowed the cooling
Oh.
towers to collapse.
Oh, right, so
Right.
they lost a certain
lost-
amount of,
yes.
a lot of money
Right.
during that period of time. That's
Yes.
right, that's what it is.
Yes.
Now-
So,
Going forward from the Senate perspective, you talked about this fence line radiation bill. Are there other thoughts that you think will be coming out of the Senate in this regard?
You know, I'm sure there will be. I don't know what they are. This just happened Thursday night.
Yeah.
And
This is Monday.
This is
So-
Monday, so I haven't had a chance to really talk to other people up there. I'm not on the natural resources, but my guess is that there will be initiatives coming out of both natural resources and out of finance. Finance deals, in our side, deals not only with raising money, but it also deals with all utility issues. So I think that
Yeah.
between the two of them,
yes.
we will probably, and just the tax on the storage, and actually at one point I decided that maybe we should look at moving the storage, especially in light of Irene, having it on the banks right there, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, now
No.
we're gonna have even more and more, and I have to look and see if this actually happened, but you know, there was an amendment to the energy bill a couple years ago that, because the federal government is having such a hard time finding a repository, that any state who had already approved a repository had to accept other waste from other places who hadn't approved a repository. And I don't know if that actually happened or not, but if it didn't, it still could, which means we get stuff from other places. And is it really safe to have it there, or should we put some up in the mines in Rutland County, or I don't know.
Transportation is a big issue.
I know it's a
Transportation.
big issue.
The military transports
We
nuclear
can't.
waste every day. It's been going on for years, but commercial waste is a whole different thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
One of the concerns I have about this ties into something else that's been a concern for many of us in the legislature this year, and that's touching on the effects of the Citizens United decision from the United States Supreme Court. And what it seems to do is give large corporations even more power than what they have now. This decision, which says that corporations have the same rights as individual people, I think is a real step in the wrong direction. What it basically says is corporate money can buy anything. It gives more power to corporations, and in many cases, these corporations are not looking out for the common good of people. And in this case, we're seeing lawsuits, that where Louisiana Entergy sues the state of Vermont. CVPS and Green Mountain Power sue Louisiana Entergy. these corporate machinations that are happening and now touching on Vermont are disturbing to me, because I believe in states' rights, I believe in individuals' rights, and giving more power to corporations, which I think this decision does. I think this really steps
You
on
mean
state...
this decision, the VY?
The VY
I think
decision,
you're
yeah.
Murtha
quite
decision
right.
Yeah.
steps on states' rights and the ability of states to set their own future, to have more of a say in what happens instead of being imposed on them by a federal entity and a corporate entity from Louisiana.
I think you're right, and
Yeah.
especially in this case when we're not even having the power. And we have on
Right.
record that it was not the legislature who got in way of creating a purchase power agreement. We have that on testimony from CVPS. It was nothing to do
Right.
with us. Entergy was not cooperating.
Yeah.
And so, and here, Jeanette, I appreciated your words that are we now unable to create our own energy future, which we thought we had been, but apparently not.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Mike, I want to bring back up is the labor issue. We never heard a squeak from, they probably couldn't because we were in the lawsuit, but I'm really interested to hear how labor is going to be assisted when this plant does close, which it will, and Entergy said, well, we have plans for that, but they weren't willing to discuss those plans. And so how are we going to get a just resolution for the workers? And I
At
know
some point,
people
the
try to
plant will
mix those
close.
things up,
Yeah.
but really, I think in our minds, it's a very separate issue.
Yeah. And that's where I think, speaking to the common good of all
Yes.
Vermonters, is also in regards to the long-term benefits for the people who actually work there. I
Yeah.
mean, these are the people who live with us, and you understand, they're wonderful people who do good things
Great
for
work.
the community and the family, and we want to support them. I think what we're holding up is the idea that maybe this corporate entity is not the beneficent power that they want to believe it is.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we've dealt with, across the state, we've dealt with other large closures. And it seems to me that some of the things that we've required of them is to notices to people in advance, certain services provided for them and everything. And so we've done it with other corporations, but as soon as you start talking about anything that has to do with
Yeah.
VY, you get put into the camp of either being pro-nuke
Yep,
or
that's right.
anti-nuke. And this isn't at all. I mean, if this was another corporation that was here that was closing down right away, I mean, if it was the retreat that
Right.
was decided that
Same
with
thing.
their
We-
700 employees or 1,200 employees
We
or
would be
however many
standing
they
up,
have,
making sure that
that they
workers
treated
were
right,
cared
and
for.
we wouldn't be put into the camp of pro-mental health or anti-mental
Exactly.
health. It's just so we need to make sure that we actually hold
Right.
them accountable the same way we would
For
any
their
other
workers
large
and their
corporation.
unions.
Yep.
It may not
Yep.
appear to some workers now that we're looking out
Right.
for their long-term benefit, but I think we are, as well as the long-term benefit
We're
of the
certainly
state.
trying to, but I have to say, this case has taken up a lot of our energy.
Yeah.
And it's sort of been the loudest voice. So
Well, there are many other issues that we will be looking at as this session unfolds. We have a lot of economic issues. There are issues around how we present mental health services to the state, and as we go on into the legislative session, we will be in touch with you, so please be in touch with us. The credits for BCTV at the end of the show will give you our contact information. You can call us, you can email us, you can send us handwritten notes. We want to hear from you. However you want to get in touch with us, but it's really important for us to hear from you.
But remember, we don't have staff, so when I get 250 emails every day, plus all the phone messages and the letters, it takes a while to respond to them.
Yes, that's
So
true.
I
That's
tend
true.
to read them, so I know what people are thinking, but I don't always get back, and sometimes it's months later, and I'm... some
Our
people-
best intentions, though,
Yes.
are to
Yeah.
answer everyone
At some point.
at some point. Yep.
Well, Sarah and Jeanette, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mike,
And
and
thank-
thank you for
Thank you for doing this, and thank you for BCTV.
Appreciate it.
for doing
Thanks for
this.
BCTV. And that's it for Montpelier Connection today. We'll see you again soon.